just until the renovation finishes. A few months. That is what my daughter-in-law Claire said when she asked for the guest house key. She stood in my kitchen with Lucas on her hip. He was 4 then, barely walking, and she smiled like the request was the most reasonable thing in the world. And it was reasonable. Their condo was being renovated. The guest house sat empty. Few months. 8 months later, she had a $1,200 bed frame on my credit card statement. My utility bills opened and sorted on her kitchen table, and her name penciled into my calendar through the end of the year. So I called a locksmith on a Tuesday morning while she was at work, and I changed the locks on every door of the guest house before she knew what I had done. Never confuse a temporary key with permanent permission. My name is Evelyn. I am 66 years old. I have lived in this house for 22 years, since my husband and I bought it when Michael was in middle school. The guest house was built 2 years later, when my mother-in-law needed a place to stay after her surgery. The contractor framed it as a favor to the family, and it was. My mother-in-law lived there for 6 years before she passed. After that, the guest house became a storage room, a guest room, a place where my sister stayed when she visited from Oregon. It was never meant to be permanent for anyone. It sits about 40 yards from the main house, separated by a stretch of lawn and a row of old maple trees that my husband planted the year we moved in. It has its own kitchen, its own bathroom, 1 bedroom, and a small living room with a picture window that faces the main house. For years, I could look out my kitchen window at night and see the lamp glowing through that picture window when my mother-in-law was still alive. It was a comfort. After she passed, the window stayed dark. When Claire asked to use it, I told myself it would be nice to have light in that window again. If you have ever watched a temporary family arrangement slowly become permanent, if you have ever heard just a few months stretch into a year without anyone acknowledging it, you know the feeling I am describing. Stay with me. I want to show you exactly how it happens. The first week was fine. Claire and Lucas moved in on a Saturday. Michael helped carry their bags. I spent the Friday before airing out the guest house, making up the bed with fresh sheets, setting a small basket of toys in the corner for Lucas. I wanted them to feel welcome. Claire thanked me warmly when she saw it. She said the guest house was perfect, exactly what they needed, and they would be out before the leaves changed. I believed her. I had no reason not to. The leaves changed in mid-October. By then, the guest house had been their home for 6 months. The first small thing happened in week 2. Claire knocked on my back door at 9 a.m. holding a laundry basket. Her washer was making a noise, she said. Could she use mine? Just this once. Of course. I showed her the basement, pointed to the detergent, said to help herself. By week 4, she had stopped asking. I would come downstairs and find a load of her towels spinning in my machine. She left her detergent on my shelf. Her detergent next to mine. I did not say anything. It was a washing machine. Felt too small to mention. But that is the thing about people like Claire. They do not take everything at once. They take one thing, then another, until you cannot remember where the line was supposed to be. If stories like this resonate with you, if you have ever watched a boundary blur until you could not see it anymore, consider subscribing. This is exactly what this channel is about. The quiet betrayals that happen inside families, and the evidence that brings the truth into focus. By month 2, she was using my kitchen. The guest house has its own kitchen, but Claire said the stove was slow and the refrigerator was small. She started cooking dinner in my kitchen 3 nights a week. She would let herself in through the back door. I never gave her a key to the main house, but she must have figured out the code on the lockbox I use for the gardener. She would call out, "It's just me," and start pulling pans from my cabinets. One evening, I came downstairs and found her standing at my stove, stirring a pot of sauce, with Lucas eating goldfish crackers at my kitchen table. She had turned on my radio to a station I did not listen to. She had rearranged the dish rack to make room for her pans. My kitchen looked different. It looked shared. I said, "The guest house stove worked fine when my mother-in-law used it." She said without turning around, "The pilot light goes out sometimes." Michael said it has always done that. Did you never notice? I had never noticed. My mother-in-law had never mentioned it. But I could not prove that Claire was wrong, so I let it go. That night, I called my sister in Oregon. I told her about the kitchen, the laundry, the way Claire had started treating the main house like a shared space. My sister listened. Then she said, "How long was she supposed to stay?" "A few months." "And how long has it been?" 2 months. She was quiet. Then she said, "Evelyn, she is not planning to leave." I dismissed it. I told my sister she was being dramatic, but I thought about it for the rest of the week. My sister lived 3 states away, and she had seen the pattern before I did from 1,200 miles. That should have told me something. Month 3. I found a pair of Lucas's shoes by my front door, a sippy cup in my dish rack, a coloring book on my coffee table. Small things. Things that told me Claire was treating the main house as shared space. Month 4. The calendar slip. Claire was sitting at my kitchen table, flipping through the family calendar I keep on the wall. She had Lucas on her lap. He was pointing at the pictures, a small pumpkin for October, a turkey for November. Claire turned the page to March and said, "Next spring, we should plant tomatoes in the back corner." Next spring. The renovation on the condo was supposed to take 3 months. It was month 4 and she was planning next spring. I said, "I thought you would be back in your place by winter." She waved her hand. "We extended the renovation. Did I not tell you? We added a whole bathroom. It will be spring for sure." She had not told me. I had not even noticed. I stared at the calendar after she left. She had already written things on it. Lucas's dentist appointment. A dinner date with friends. Her name in her handwriting on my wall calendar. When had she started doing that? I could not remember the first time. Here is where it shifted from uncomfortable to wrong. Month 5. The bank statement arrived on a Tuesday. I opened it over coffee the same way I had opened every statement for 30 years. But this time a charge jumped out at me. $1,250 to a furniture store I had never visited. I read it 3 times, hoping the numbers would rearrange themselves into something I recognized. They did not. I called the bank. The representative read me the transaction details. A queen bed frame delivered to my address, ordered online 11 days ago. I called Claire. "Oh, that," she said. "The guest bed was sagging. I was going to tell you. I figured you would want me to be comfortable." She had memorized my card number. She had placed an online order. She had signed my name, or she had not signed anything because online purchases do not require a signature. She had typed in the digits from a card she saw in my wallet when I paid for groceries once. She had watched me enter the PIN at the grocery store, filed away the number, and used it months later. I canceled the card. I told her I would get a replacement. She said, "Sure, no problem." She did not apologize. Not once. The week after that, I started paying more attention. I watched the way Claire moved through my house. She had stopped announcing herself. She would walk in, set down her bag, open the refrigerator, pour herself a glass of water, and sit at my table like she had always lived there. She had a mug. Her mug. She kept it in my cabinet. Month 6. The mail. I came home from the grocery store and found an envelope from the utility company sitting on my kitchen counter opened. The slit was clean, deliberate. Someone had used a letter opener. I asked Claire if she had seen my mail. She said, "Oh, that envelope? It was sitting in the mailbox with a bunch of junk. I thought it was another flyer." I opened it before I realized. I looked at the envelope. It said City of Milwaukee Waterworks in large blue letters on the front. It did not look like junk. I said, "Please do not open my mail." She said, "Of course. Sorry." Force of habit. Force of habit. She had been sorting my mail long enough that opening it had become routine. She had been standing at my mailbox, pulling out the envelopes, deciding what reached me and what did not. I do not know how long that had been happening. Weeks. Months. I had not noticed because I had stopped checking. I had gotten used to finding my mail already sorted on the counter. Month 7. I sat down at my kitchen table with a yellow legal pad and a pen. I wrote down everything I could remember. The laundry, the kitchen, Lucas's shoes, the calendar slip, the bed frame, the open mail, the mug, the groceries. I almost forgot that one. A $340 run to the supermarket that she had put on my card before I canceled it. I found the receipt tucked into the bottom of the paper statement. She had bought steaks, wine, organic vegetables. And at the bottom, in the signature line, she had written my name. Not forged, just written. The cashier had not checked. Why would they? It was a woman buying groceries. It looked like my life printed on paper. I looked at the list and counted. 7 months. 6 distinct boundary violations. And I had not said a single firm no to any of them. I realized something sitting there. Claire had not broken any laws. She had not forged a deed. She had not drained my bank account. She had simply treated my home as hers, one small decision at a time, and I had let every single one pass because each one was too small to fight. But together they added up to a complete erasure of the line between her life and mine. That is the trap. Not one big lie. 20 small assumptions. This is where I made the choice that changed everything. That night I went online and searched for locksmiths near me. I found one with good reviews. I called the next morning. I asked how much it would cost to rekey 3 doors on a detached guest house. He quoted me $185, including the service call. I made an appointment for that Thursday. I did not tell Claire. I did not tell Michael. I told myself I would explain afterward. The locksmith arrived at 9 a.m. on Thursday. Claire had left for work at 7. Lucas was at daycare. The guest house was empty. I walked through it one last time before Gary arrived. Claire's robe hung on the back of the bathroom door. Lucas's crayons were scattered on the coffee table. A half-full mug sat in the kitchen sink. Not my mug. Her mug. She had brought it from the main house. Gary arrived in a white van with a magnetic sign on the side. He was in his 50s, calm professional. He asked which doors. I showed him all 3. He worked for about an hour, moving from one door to the next, replacing the pins in each lock. I watched from the main house window. Every time he finished a door, he tested it with a new key. When he was done, he handed me 3 sets of new keys. $185, exactly what he quoted. I put 1 set in my kitchen drawer. I put 1 set in the lockbox in my closet. I held the 3rd set in my hand and walked out to the guest house. I unlocked the front door with the new key. It turned smoothly. I locked it again. I stood on the small porch and looked at the main house through the maple trees. The picture window was dark. It would stay dark now. That afternoon, I called the bank and confirmed my new card number. I set a spending alert. Any charge over $50 would send me a text message. I asked them to remove any authorized users from the account. The representative said there were none. Claire had never been listed. She had simply typed in the number the way you type in a number you have memorized. I felt something I had not felt in months. I felt the shape of my own life coming back. That evening, I sat in my living room and looked at the 3 new keys on the coffee table. They were small, silver, unremarkable, but they meant that 40 yards of lawn and a row of maple trees now belonged to me again. I did not celebrate. I did not cry. I just sat there and let the quiet settle around me. Claire got home at 5:30. I watched from my kitchen window as she pulled into the driveway, walked up to the guest house front door, and inserted her key. It did not turn. She tried again. She looked at the key. She tried the handle. Nothing. She stood there for a moment. Then she turned and looked at the main house. I was standing in the kitchen window. She could see me. I raised my hand in a small wave. She did not wave back. She just stood there, holding a key that no longer worked, staring at the house where she had lived for 8 months as if she was seeing it for the first time. She called me at 6:15. "The locks are different," she said. "I had them rekeyed," I said. "Why?" "Because it is my property, Claire, and I wanted new locks." A pause. She was trying to decide how to respond. I could hear her breathing. "Are you locking us out?" "I am changing the locks on my guest house. You still have 3 months to move out." That was always the agreement. It was a few months. It has been 8 months. You have 3 more. That is more than fair. She did not argue. She said, "Fine," and hung up. The next morning, she tried to use the credit card at the grocery store. It was declined. She called me. "The card is not working." I canceled that card. The new one came today. I did not add you to it. I was not trying to. "Claire, you spent $1,200 on a bed frame without asking. You bought groceries for 3 weeks on my card. I am not adding you to the new one. You could have told me." "I just did." She hung up again. That weekend, Michael came over. He did not call first, he just appeared at my front door. He looked tired. He stood in my entryway with his hands in his pockets and asked if we could talk. I made coffee. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Claire had flipped through my calendar and planned next spring. "Mom," he said, "Claire said you changed the locks on the guest house." "Yes." "And you cut off the credit card." "Yes." He rubbed his face. "She is really upset." "Michael, she lived in my guest house for 8 months. She charged $1,200 to my card without asking. She opened my mail. She signed my name on a grocery receipt. I did not cut her off. I restored the boundaries she erased." He was quiet. He stared at his coffee. "She says you are overreacting." "Does she?" "She says it was just a few things." "Michael, write down everything you remember from when we talked about the guest house. How long was it supposed to be?" He hesitated. "A few months." "It has been 8. I gave her 3 more. That is 11 months total for what was supposed to be a few months. Tell me how that is overreacting." He did not have an answer. He sat there, turning the coffee mug in his hands, her mug, I realized. Claire's mug. He was holding it the same way she held it. I wondered if she had brought it to him, or if he had chosen it without thinking. "She said the guest house feels like home now," he said. "She does not understand why you would take that away from her." "It was never her home, Michael. It was my guest house. There is a difference. She said you were like a second mother to her. She said she thought you wanted them there." I looked at my son. He was not defending her. He was trying to understand how 2 people he loved could see the same situation so differently. His face had the same confusion I had seen on it when he was 10 years old, trying to figure out why a math problem did not add up. "I wanted them there temporarily," I said. "I wanted to help. But somewhere along the way, Claire stopped treating it like help and started treating it like ownership. That is not the same thing. He nodded slowly. I know. He said it quietly. I know. He finished his coffee and set the mug down. Claire's mug. He left it on the counter. I did not know if he meant to. He hugged me at the door, but it felt different. Tighter. Shorter. Like he was already standing on the other side of a line he did not know how to cross back over. I stood at the door and watched him walk to his car. He did not look back. 3 months is a long time to watch someone leave. Claire started moving out slowly. A box of kitchen items. A suitcase of clothes. Lucas's toys. She did not speak to me unless she had to. When she did, it was clipped and polite. Where is the mail slot? Do you need this box back? The kind of politeness that is angrier than silence. I watched from the main house as the guest house emptied. The picture window that had glowed with lamplight every evening went dark. The car that had been parked in the driveway every night stopped coming. By the end of the first month, the guest house had the hollow look of a place waiting for its next occupant. One evening in the second month, I saw the guest house lights on and walked over without thinking. It was not the first time Claire had been packing late. Through the picture window, I saw her standing in the middle of the living room, holding a framed photo of Michael and Lucas. She was looking at it the way you look at something you are not sure you want to leave behind. I almost turned back, but she saw me and set the frame down, so I knocked. One afternoon, I walked over while Claire was packing. I knocked on the door frame. She looked up from a box of kitchen supplies. I wanted to say, I started, that I do not want this to be ugly between us. She did not answer. She taped the box shut. I am not trying to punish you, I said. I am trying to go back to the way things were. Things were never going to go back to the way they were, she said. You invited us in. You cannot uninvite us and pretend nothing happened. I did not invite you in for 8 months. You did not stop me either. She was right. I had not. Michael's calls slowed. He used to call every Sunday. After the locks, it became every other Sunday. Then once a month. When he called, we talked about the weather, his job, Lucas's preschool. We did not talk about Claire. We did not talk about the guest house. We talked around the subject the way you walk around a hole in the floor. I do not blame him. He was trying to keep both relationships. He was trying to be a good son and a good husband. I do not think he knew that those two things had already become incompatible the moment Claire decided my guest house was hers. He was standing in the middle of a bridge that was burning on both ends, and he could not decide which way to run. On the last day of the 3rd month, Claire came to my front door. She held out a key, not a new key, one of the old ones, the one that had stopped working the day Gary the locksmith had come. I thought you might want this back, she said. I have new ones, I said. Keep it. She did not know what to do with that. She stood there holding the key in her open palm. After a moment, she closed her hand around it and walked back to her car. I watched her drive away. Lucas waved from the back seat. I waved back. The guest house has been empty for 4 months now. I walk through it sometimes. The rooms are clean. The bed frame Claire bought is still there. I did not ask her to take it, and she did not offer. I think about throwing it out, but it is a good frame, and throwing it out feels like paying twice for the same mistake. I keep the old keys in a small glass jar on the shelf above my kitchen sink. There are 3 of them. They do not fit any lock on this property anymore. But I keep them as a reminder that the most dangerous arrangement is not the one that starts with a fight. It is the one that starts with a favor. Before you let anyone tell you it is just temporary, write down the date. Write down the terms. Write down what happens when the date passes. Not because you do not trust them, because trust and memory are not the same thing. I still have the yellow legal pad I wrote on that night. The list of boundary violations. The dates. The amounts. The things I did not say. It is in my filing cabinet, tucked between the warranty for my water heater and the deed to this house. I do not need it for anything, but I like knowing it is there. Claire lives in an apartment now 20 minutes away. I saw her at the grocery store once. We passed each other in the produce aisle. She nodded. I nodded. We kept walking. There was nothing left to say that had not already been said through a changed lock and a declined card. Michael calls every few weeks. We are polite. We are careful. We are both waiting to see if the distance between us will close again. I do not know if it will. But I know this: my keys work. My card is in my wallet. My mail comes to my table, and I am the one who opens it. And the guest house is mine again. If you have ever let a family member stay just for a while and watch the days stretch into months, tell me your story in the comments. I read every single one. And if you want more stories like this one, consider subscribing, because the quiet betrayals are the ones that teach us the most.